This is the ATI.
Hello, and thanks to all of our followers coming back here to the ATI podcast for our live Twitch broadcast today. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm Barrett Lewis, host, Josh Welch, co-host by my side. And today we've got a very special guest with us for our guest spotlight, and that's Mr. Tim Baltes. How are you doing, Tim?
Howdy ho! How are you guys doing over there?
We're doing wonderful, sir.
Great.
We appreciate you joining the show.
Good. Thank you guys for having me on. It's always nice to talk to a couple other old metalheads about whatever the heck we're going to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. If you're joining us too for the first time today and you think that you have a question for Tim in the midst of our conversations or you want to hammer down on something, feel free to use the Twitch chat. Hop in there, ask questions. We'll work them in whenever we can. And I just kind of want to start off things today with kind of how I came across Tim personally. And I'm a drummer. That's my primary instrument of focus, although I can play other instruments. So I'm always looking at drum reels and stuff. And I have another friend that's toured with a lot of acts and stuff who is always creating drum reels and trying to get ideas for stuff to work on and that sort of thing. And so that's how I stumbled upon Tim in particular. But I found that Tim had so much more interesting things in his background and going on. And I know, like, what kind of took things to the next level for me was like around the holidays, whenever you were doing like a lot of those joke videos or whenever you would play and sing along, but you would kind of just, be goofy and stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Those are classic.
And I couldn't tell you, dude, how many times just like I might have been having a bad day and I just saw one of your videos and it just totally turned things around for me for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's good content.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good wholesome shit for sure.
Yeah.
So, man, I just got to ask you, like, where did this all start for you? Like, why drums? I know that that's pretty much the driving vehicle for everything we're going to be talking about today. How long have you been playing? Why drums? That sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of, right before the show started, one of the things we kind of talked about was this history with heavy music, right? And you guys recently had two of the guys from See You Next Tuesday on the pod, which I think I saw them in '07. It was a tour with like Psyopus and Acacia Strain and a bunch of other names that we all know.
Yeah.
And that was really a few years into my career, but I started playing out when I was 12, but I was playing bass at that time. We had a punk scene here right in between Milwaukee and Chicago, so bands like Alkaline Trio would play in town here, Lawrence Arms, a lot of that Chicago Midwest punk stuff was really happening. Even ska, I started going to shows when I was 10, so everybody and their mom was in a ska band at that point. But things evolved, and I really wasn't involved in metal until I was about 15 or 16, because I started playing drums at 15 out of necessity in a hardcore band.
Yeah.
And so hardcore turned into, this would have been about 2005, and then by 2006 metalcore was the hot thing, so I got into a metalcore band. And then by '07, '08, deathcore was really taking off over here. So Oceano was the really big name that came out of Chicago, and there were a ton of other great bands. I mean, this was really just a hub for heavy music, I think, and it was great to have some amazing local artists, and then to see a lot of the touring bands come through here too. And what I loved about that community is if at that point in time, it still felt super punk rock culturally, like whether you were in a little band out of Kenosha, Wisconsin, or if you were, the big dudes in Acacia Strain, you were playing similar venues, albeit with different turnouts, but it was still the same places, a lot of the same faces, and everybody was on the same level. It didn't feel like, rock stars and not stars kind of
Right,
thing.
right.
So, that was something I really appreciated about that. But yeah, it started back then, and then that evolved. I went to college, started working after that, and got to the point where I was just sick of playing in bands. So to get into Instagram, it was basically I started posting pictures of my drums and stuff when that was the only thing you could do on Instagram.
Right.
Which
Yeah,
turned
for
it turned into 15-second videos. So I was posting I got a little like Zoom camera with a microphone on it, and I started taking videos of my drums and stuff, and slowly that evolved, and then I would start doing some of the comedy stuff, and people loved that, and that was always part of the deal. When I was playing in bands, we had, I don't know about you guys, but when I was playing in death metal bands, it was from Wisconsin to Illinois and back, it was all the same guys. You'd be playing with the same, whatever, 10, 15 bands. And so everybody knew everybody. So we had a fake band of whoever would be at the show, that night
Yeah.
that would, play kind of like whatever, a 20-minute comedy intermission.
Right.
And it was called Hooray for Haircuts. and it would be like, the core band was these two brothers, Jarrett and Kyle Evans from Racine, Wisconsin, and like one of the dudes would play the drums and the other would play the guitar or whatever, and then we'd have like one guy would play bass, and it was just nonsense grindcore, and then there'd be like however many extra mics we had, everybody got a vocal mic. And so, like, I'd be up there screaming about whatever Oreos and whatever, and there'd be another guy just over eating popcorn in the microphone, like it was. But it was just the idea that we're playing music that is, to most normal folks, it's almost like scary, right?
Yeah.
And then we're doing the goofiest thing you can imagine. It was something else, and when it came to Instagram, I really wanted to bring that part of my personality too. And what was so interesting is how it was received. So on Instagram, well, when I was younger, when I'm off camera, I tend to use a little flowery language from time to time. But when I'm on Instagram, I don't really cuss at all, because I quickly found out that drummers are enjoying this content, the spouses of drummers are enjoying this content, and their kids are enjoying this content too.
Right.
So, I wanted to continue to foster that sort of thing that would bring all of these couples and families together.
Sure.
Right.
And so that's why, the most recent Stilly video I did was that Shrek video, where it was, I don't know if anybody saw that, but it was like it was an All-Star by Smash Mouth.
Yeah.
And I got a spray painted Shrek shirt like you'd get at a state fair with my name spray painted on it, and like a $20 Shrek mask that is way too small for my face. So it's like, it was so funny because in the video you can literally see me breathing, like the mask is moving in and out as I freaking breathe. It was so tight. But people loved it. That video got over 700,000 views. That stupid video that took me 30 seconds to shoot.
Yeah.
So, as much as I like to put, today was the first time I posted in months because it's been a tough beginning of the year. But today I posted a serious video, which was, I don't know if it's Frou Frou or Fro Fro, but it's a band that Emojin Heat did with another producer, and in the early 2000s, great music. And so it's like a serious video. But I try to balance that seriousness with the comedy, because it does brighten people's day. Like you said, you've had tough days and you see my stupid video where I'm singing and wearing grandma makeup or whatever. And that's why I do like to post, is because it makes a difference in people's lives, as silly as that sounds. But if you can help somebody have a 15, 30 or 60-second reprieve from a really tough day, man, that's worth more than gold, in my opinion.
Right. And not only that, like, the internet's so full of so much negativity now too. It is kind of refreshing to see people putting out positive content, because it seems like, a lot of it's politics, a lot of it's this and that, and so it is good to see wholesome content, in my opinion. So it's cool to see people are still promoting that.
100%.
It's not all serious all the time.
Right.
Yeah, and I think particularly we've seen that in drum culture, the serious nature of everything. I talk about that on podcasts all the time, because I think that's why people resonate with my content. There are so many drummers on Instagram who play the same chop, or quick technical stupid drum stuff in every video every single day, and they got a flat affect, and they're just doing the same thing. But then you come across something like my content, and it's like, okay, well, here's a guy who doesn't care about anything. So and for whatever reason, it does. People then care about that. So I don't know. It's just It's a good thing though. It's a good thing. I like I don't know. I like making people happy, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
We do got one viewer comment that I just wanted to throw out there too, while we're on the subject of funny videos. One of our viewers said that they actually enjoyed the Jurassic Park video. It kills every time, and his son in particular loves it, and they go to it very routinely. So
that's awesome. That's killer.
So that's very awesome for sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
And I know I've showed my kids like your videos as well too, and my wife, and they always get a good kick out of the comedy end of things in particular. It's kind of funny that there's just so many like happenstance parallels between everything like you're talking about and things that we went through and experienced. Like the first band I was in technically was a hardcore band. It was about 2005 as well, and I started out on bass because I needed a bass player at the time, but I was actually a drummer. And the guy that's playing drums was actually a guitar player, so he'd have been better at bass than me.
And he was trying to play drums.
Yeah. And then
it was wild.
And then that morphed over the years, and that eventually became kind of like a doom metal band.
That's kind of
like
sweet,
some progressive,
yeah,
with some progressive influences and stuff, kind of like similar to like Intronaut, but still yet having like I wouldn't say grindcore, but kind of the hardcore versions of like Converge's heavy influence and stuff like that, because it was like all of our favorite band. And so we were always trying to do something a little bit in that realm.
It's so funny. It's like I feel like there's like that school of metal dudes who like, all right, we go from like hardcore to death metal, and now we're getting old, so I guess we're gonna like slow it down. So we're just gonna play Doom. Doom feels good.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there's like guys like me. There's so many guys like me who Bryson Nelson is another one who comes to mind, who owns Nelson Drum Shop in Nashville. First time I met Bryson, we were talking about this, how we grew up playing metal, but now we're playing like pop and folk. Like, how in the world do you go from blast beats to freaking
You're right. Yeah, I know. It is funny. I actually did like a gig with a touring Irish cover band for like St. Patty's Day season for a couple years. And it was cool. Like, I mean, it was good, easy cash, and I had fun with the guys. It wasn't necessarily my cup of tea music-wise, but you're playing. And I always found, like, pushing yourself as an artist, pushing yourself as a musician, playing things that you're not comfortable with, also kind of, like, sharpens your tool set, for sure. Right. So it wasn't all bad stuff. And then, actually, kind of another happenstance parallel, too. Today you posted that, serious story that you referred to earlier. And you talked about, like, some of the troubles that you've been going through with, like the water in your basement and COVID and stuff. Dude, all that exact same shit happened to me.
It just happened in Missouri, dude.
Yeah, to me.
And he's the one that got it bad. I didn't have any issues there.
Yeah. I got COVID for the first time, like, right after Thanksgiving. And then my wife was born on Christmas Eve, so it was her birthday. And I wake up and I can't move. Turns out I have 3 bulging discs in my back. And, dude, it was rough, man. And then we come home after being in the ER all day. And my upstairs bathroom, my master bath, is leaking down into my kitchen, just full blown water pouring down. Got all over my custom Fender jazz bass that I made. It was like a Frankenstein project. Yeah. And that cold water got onto the bass, and because of the tension and stuff on there, it just cracked the wood, and it just like totally ruined it. It was totally it was just totally unsalvageable. Unfortunately, man, and it was just like. Whenever you depicted that story today, I was like definitely feeling for you, because I went through literally almost the same thing.
When it rains, it pours, dude. Yeah. I'm hoping I've had enough excitement the last 3 freaking months here. Like, hopefully it simmers down. But it's kind of funny, people like, there have been people DMing me and commenting on old posts and even texting and calling me if they got my number. But some of the people who don't personally know me, they're like, hey, where are you? Where's the content and everything? And it's like, dude, like, I've got a 9 to 5, and like, I have a life, like, it's kind of funny how people, I film all these videos in my mom's basement, dude, like, and I'm in my mid-30s. So it's just like, it's interesting that people they see what they want to see. You know,
Right.
I
Sure.
think that's kind of how social media is, right? Like you try to put your best foot forward, your best image
Yeah.
forward, and everything, but there's so much that goes on beyond the camera,
Right. Absolutely.
that most folks get, but every once in a while you get somebody who's just like, I'm not a freaking rock star here, dude. I
Right.
drive a freaking Honda Fit. Okay, we're not balling.
This ain't on demand, Tim. This is when you get Tim.
I like that. That's good. Now, you've talked about geographically some of your stomping grounds and stuff. Are you kind of like a northern Chicago guy? Is that your main
Yes.
area that you kind of rolled around in?
I was born in Illinois, but then we immediately moved back here. My family's been in Kenosha, Wisconsin since the early 1900s. Moved here from Europe to here.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And yeah,
That's
and
cool.
and so yeah, that's why it's Timbo from Kenosha, Wisconsin. That's what that
Gotcha.
is. That's what that's about. Not
Okay.
I don't play Keno. I don't like. I can't
I was
do
wondering.
casinos.
Yeah.
Only the last time I went to a casino, we went there to eat the good Asian food and watched Blues Traveler.
That's the
what
gimmick,
yeah.
dude. That's the gimmick, man.
Get that
They got that
buffet and
awesome
some music.
buffet.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, all day.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Kenosha this is it, man. And like I said, it's just as silly as it is. There's been so much music here. Chicago, obviously, everything from Smashing Pumpkins to everything
Yeah.
Steve Albini's done, and
Right.
And then
Fall Out
Milwaukee.
Boy. I mean,
yeah, Fall Out Boy. I mean, I worked at Music Around here in Kenosha, Wisconsin through college, and that's the same dudes who own the one in Milwaukee. And one of the owners, this dude would always tell me stories about how, I don't know if it was Pete Wentz or the other dude who plays, the lead dude in Fall
Patrick.
Out Boy, but
Yeah.
Patrick. One of those dudes was always breaking their guitar, and Ken would always have to fix this guitar at Music Around. Like he's just like, man, you guys broke the freaking thing again.
how
Like,
do you?
but it's just so funny how small a world it is. These guys were just local musicians at the time, breaking their stuff every single day.
Yeah.
And now they're bajillionaires.
Yeah. They came through here. What, when we were teenagers? What?
Yeah, like I
2006?
want to say like 2003ish. No, it was,
Oh, it was
definitely
earlier than
before
that?
06. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was right
Wow.
before they hit it off big. We had a guy, a local promoter around here who's now up in St. Louis doing big stuff, but Joey O'Farrell was his name. We've had him on the podcast previously. And he had like Fall Out Boy and like My Chemical Romance, just so many other bands just come in
a
through down
Chicago
here.
band that I was obsessed with.
Spitalfield.
That was what I was getting ready
Yeah,
to say. It's
Spitalfield.
fucking
I've never
Spitalfield.
Spitalfield.
When
Yeah.
I was younger, man, I was a
I
big
gotta
fan.
look them up.
I think they were more like Carbondale-ish.
Yeah, they were
area.
more like poppy.
Oh, yeah.
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 But yeah, they were pretty popular there for a while as well. But yeah, he brought a lot of like credible artists down to our area, which is technically Farmington, Missouri. We're south of St. Louis, about
Oh, yeah.
65 miles or so. But yeah, man, like it's kind of wild again. Some of the crossover we're
Right.
talking about here,
Right.
kind of in that same window of time frames. I mean, we're basically the same age as well.
Yeah.
I turned 36 here this summer myself. So, but yeah. So with you being in the Chicago area, I got to ask you the $1 million question: Cubs or White Sox?
Oh, Cubs, dude. I mean,
Oh man,
that's just
this
listen,
interview just went south.
well, it went north. It went north to Wrigley Field is where it went.
I figured with the North.
No, yeah, I
aspect.
mean, I always like the Brewers. I'm not a sports guy, so
Yeah.
like I like going to Brewers games. I mean, I went to Brewers games when County Stadium was still in Milwaukee. And
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
what's so cool about the Brewers games? You guys ever been up that way?
Not to the Brewers games.
No.
It's kind of like a bucket list stadium I like to go to because I've heard that it's like,
And
top
Wrigley.
5, top 3.
I've never been
Wrigley
Wrigley.
too.
Wrigley's a bucket list for me, even though I'm a Cardinals fan.
I'll tell you my Wrigley story in a minute. But what I like about going to a Brewers game is the tailgate is unmatched, and then you get in the stadium and it's not just about a freaking baseball game. They have like the sausage races where you got like 5 guys in, like there's like a guy in a hot dog, an Italian sausage, there's a Polish sausage, there's a chorizo, and
That's hilarious.
and these giant costumes, and they're falling over trying to run around the whole stadium. And then there's a guy who drives a freaking motorcycle around the stadium at one point, and it's a show. It's not just a ball game. and there's something special about that. But yeah, Wrigley is for me is just like that's history. Like
Yeah,
that
for
is
sure.
that's
It
an
is.
old stadium.
Right.
Right.
And so I had two buddies who were with this band, Catfish and the Bottlemen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know
And
they are.
so my buddy Joe was the drum tech and stage manager,
Okay.
and then Bob was the drummer. And they were opening for Green Day at Wrigley one day, and a few weeks prior they kind of said, "Hey, we're doing Wrigley. Do you want to come hang out?" I said, I'm gonna be there."
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
I come out way early. What's funny is, so many people when they want to go to whatever their friends' bands, bigger band show, I think so many musicians just expect, all right, I'll just guest list you and just enjoy the show or whatever.
Yeah.
I almost never stay for the show. I want to get there at about 1 p.m. I want to hang out with you. We're gonna go for a little hors d'oeuvre and a drink or something, and then I'm gonna get home before 6:30 because I gotta go to bed by 8. Okay, so. But the Wrigley thing was one thing I stayed for. So I get to the stadium about noon or 1 o'clock, and now these guys, if you know Catfish and the Bottlemen, they're British. They
Yep.
don't know anything about freaking baseball.
Right.
So I had to give these guys. We had full access to Wrigley, so I gave them the grand tour. So we go out and we're literally standing in the outfield, just touching the ivy, and they see me touching the ivy. They're like, "What is this? Why is this like a thing?" They don't get it.
Right.
And then we go and I say, I'm going to sit dead center, first row behind home plate, just to say I've done it. And then we're just running around all the back, ways and stuff. We're walking through one thing. One of the guys from Green Day's wives is doing like Pilates or something in the back. So we kind of go around her, and then we went to the catering. Green Day's catering was just insane. There was like a 3-foot tall rainbow cake, and there's like chocolate fondue, and it was just like Willy Wonka catering.
Holy hell.
And it was crazy. And I think one of the most special parts was I'm up on stage during sound check, and I was on one of 5 people on stage when Green Day played like 3 songs through just to sound check. Like, who has that opportunity?
Right.
And but it was cool, like it was great to spend time with my homies there all day and all night.
Right.
And what was funny is then I made friends with Nathaniel, who is Trey Cool's drum tech, really nice guy. And I was at NAMM in 2019, and I took a day to go over to Pro Drum Hollywood, which is like the original drum shop. And I'm standing there and I hear somebody go behind me, "Tim?" And I turn around, it's freaking Nathaniel. We just so happened to run into each other at freaking Pro Drum in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like such a special thing, I don't know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's amazing how small the world becomes as you continue to, I don't know, get more into the insular community that is drummers,
Right, for sure.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Now, I know you initially you mentioned that you started on bass and went to drums in some of those bands earlier, but was there something that drew you to playing drums specifically in your early years and learning how to play drums? Was there a band or a musician or just necessity?
There's so many kids musicians who seem to have this sentiment now as we've gotten older, and I was this way when I was a kid, as I was the guy at band practice, whether I was playing bass or guitar or singing in a band, where when we took a break, I was hopping on the freaking drum set.
Yeah.
And I never thought anything of it. I just thought this is way more fun than whatever the heck I'm doing in the band.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
And so, looking back now, I'm just like, gosh, I wish I would have bought a drum set earlier.
Sure. Yeah.
But once I hopped on drums full time in a band, it was like, okay, this is where I'm meant to be. It just felt more natural than the other ones. Not to say that, I played piano growing up, and like I said, bass, guitar, and I was a pretty rotten singer, but I was good enough for a ska band. So, but it was just, I hopped on drums, and it was just like, this is what I was born to do musically.
Yeah. I know that, it's for me personally, I can say my dad was a drummer and he was in a band. He played like in a Christian rock band. They got to like play Illinois State Fair and stuff when I was real young. It was just like some of my earliest memories. And he had an opportunity one time to open up for Huey Lewis and the News at a county fair.
Wow.
And this is like, in the 80s when Huey Lewis and the News is big, you know.
Right.
So, those were, very, I guess, I didn't realize at the time, but there were moments that was like, planting those seeds for me to be like, hey, I'm going to be a musician. Not that my dad ever was like, learn to play this or watch me or taught me anything, because he was a man who did not have any patience whatsoever. So anything I learned was on my own or just by watching, at a distance. But
Was he a drummer too?
Yeah, he played drums. He could noodle around on the bass and guitar. He could stay in key for the most part, but he really had no idea what he was doing on stringed instruments.
It's so funny how, family can come into this. My dad, he recreationally played guitar. I still have his acoustic guitar, but my uncle Dick, his brother, my dad's brother, was a weekend warrior in the 70s and 80s, drummer.
Gotcha.
He still has it's like a 68, 69 Ludwig that my grandparents bought for him used.
Wow.
And then, that he was a weekend warrior when that made a load of dough every weekend. So he's got a 80s 6-ply Ludwig Octopus kit, which for the non-drummers just means it's a pile of drums. It's got 2 bass drums. It's got 8 toms across, a floor tom, and a snare drum. It's just a giant drum set.
Yeah.
And he still has that too. And we played together. I'm going to a concert with him. There's some big jazz drummer who's coming to town next week. All I know is that he's a Craviotto artist, plays that brand of drums. But
gotcha.
So it's like, it's cool because that family connection is like, he kind of makes me wonder. I don't know about you, especially with it being your dad, but it makes me wonder, is this, it's almost like, is this in my blood? Like, is this just...
I do feel like that. I mean, certainly we all know that music can be learned. There's the theory aspect of things. But I also saw a lot of kids in band class, sit down, some of the most studious kids, and they just could not carry a tune for the life of them.
Right.
Regardless of what the instrument was. Or rhythm, rhythm as well.
God bless. My freaking little cousin and I used to make these silly songs, and I would have to, now mind you, we share maternal, it's my mom and his aunt or sisters, but we share a little bit of the same DNA, not the dad stuff where the music stuff is.
Gotcha.
I'm glad I didn't get all of mom's side DNA because they got rhythm more than nothing. Because I'd have to, when we make these songs, I'd have to say, all right, here's the next line, da 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 da, and then he could da 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 da. But if I didn't sing out that rhythm, he'd be, it was like, what are you doing? So, oh my God, some people, God bless those who don't have rhythm, because I don't know how they get through the day.
My wife, a couple summers ago, got me a electronic drum set, just a little cheap one, so I could practice in the house and stuff and not, like, traumatize my children. But so she got me that, and I was setting it up, so my kids naturally became interested in that in particular. So to encourage them to play, I got them their own drumsticks. And I'll be damned if not, like, both of my kids, again, never really hearing me play drums or anything like that, could sit down and keep a pace. Wow. And so that I say that to say this, and back to your original point, like, I think there is some genetics in there sometimes. And my daughter, who just turned 1, I caught her clapping to a song that we were listening to in the car, and it was on tempo for about 20 seconds.
That's so cool.
And I was like, this can't be an accident.
Right.
You know, so I think there is something to that for sure.
Yeah, it just seems like it just comes naturally to some people. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like, they're almost born with that instinct to do. Yeah. So,
And I'll say too, like, even though I had some formal training, like more of my formal trainings more so with like concert saxophone.
Right.
Like I was I was an honors saxophone player and played saxophone jazz band and stuff too. But like I just learned how to play the drums on my own. Our school was a small school, like nobody could play drums except for like a few select people. So it was like, it was the nicest guy in prison sort of situation. But, so I by default became the drummer pretty much constantly.
Huh.
and just for lack of other drummers, continued to be the drummer. But it was my main instrument too, kind of my passion. But yeah, that
That's where you
genetic
learn
thing's.
how to play. That's where you learn how to play blast beats. Is middle school jazz band.
Yeah, well, it definitely gives you the techniques and the wrist and stuff to flick. Get some of that going.
There you go. There you go.
What I know you talked a little bit about going to college and stuff. Was there any other formal training that you had, or did you even go to college for music related stuff?
Not for music, and honestly, I'm glad I didn't go to school for music because it's like, yeah, to me, I think now if you're privileged and you can go, you got a college fund or something, and you can
Yeah,
go to college for free, shoot, go and study music because that is a privilege right there. That's a really
right.
special thing you can do. But I did not have that privilege. I worked full time through college to make sure that I got out with no debt, which was brutal, but I did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And as far as the music training is concerned, this kind of goes back to some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier. Some of these bands. So before, you remember the band Misery Signals?
absolutely. Loved them.
So
Yeah.
yeah, great band. And before they had a band before called Seven Angels, Seven Plagues. And if there's a record out there called Jasmine's Lullaby, it's on streaming. And the drummer on there is Jared Logan. And I was very fortunate to study with him a few times. Those were some of the first drum lessons that I ever had. I'd already been playing for a while. And what's so silly is like the things that now he was playing in hardcore bands, and I was playing in hardcore bands, and I get to his studio in Racine, and he's like, "All right, do you know how to play a clave?" And I'm like, "What the heck is a clave?" And so, but like, learning that exercise helped with my independence, which as I grew up and started playing death metal, okay, now my feet can do this one thing, my right hand can do this rhythm, and
Yeah.
I did all sorts of really cool rhythms where I had four toms and a snare, so I could do all these really interesting melodic things in a death metal context, all because I was taught what a clave is.
Yeah.
And the other part that I still carry with me today is how Jared played his double strokes in a really, really clean way. So that's why, so much of my drumming, if you watch the covers I play or whatever, there's a lot of ghost notes going on, sort
Yeah.
of these complementary notes under volume wise under the beat.
Yes.
And that's because I still use that technique because for me, it's a way to kind of create continuity through the drum beat without getting in the way of the song.
Right.
But yeah, it all comes from those few lessons I took with him. And again, we're at the age here where we were coming up during the advent of YouTube.
Right. Exactly.
So in the same way that I kind of advocate for learning professional skills through free resources, whether it's something like Coursera or Udemy that have great free courses, or some of these like programming like Full Stack academies that have different free class offerings.
Yeah.
That's how I learned drum stuff. I was watching like Eric Moore's 2003 Guitar Center drum off video,
Yeah.
or that classic video of Tony Royster playing when he was
Yeah.
12 years old.
Oh yeah.
And whatever little lessons I could find on YouTube at the time, that was super, super helpful to me. And then I would just kind of fill in the gaps. So yeah, not a ton of lessons. I think I've taken under 10 drum lessons in my entire life. But more of it was through all that self-discovery.
Right. Yeah. And you're probably the same age too as us in the sense that you went through the Napster times and probably got those. Yeah, like you mentioned the name Tony Royster Jr.'s drum solo that they had out there that was real popular that made the rounds. So like I would go and kind of find those out there. They'd have the drummer from 311, his drum solo too was pretty popular as well.
Yep.
Several different artists, but those were ones that I would listen to, and I never like really. And then later I would get into people like Buddy Rich, Max Roach, kind of some old school jazz players, and the Max or the Roach versus Rich album that they did together too, and really kind of discover that side of things as well. But yeah, like we came up in this weird boom where technology was starting to expand those resources and accesses too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't really capitalize on it probably like I should have because I was too busy out having fun. I know personally, but
Same here.
that kind of drives me into my next thing is how well I think that you've implemented social media into everything that you're doing. I know we've kind of talked about it and kind of what your methodology behind the madness is, if you will. But yeah, I just I can't encourage folks enough to check out your videos and what you're doing. Even through the comedy, there's lessons there, and you talk kind of about your technique with the ghost notes and stuff, and filling that space. And that's something I can't say exactly whenever I started doing it, but I did notice that my playing overall, sound wise, whenever I would go and track stuff, it just filled every arrangement out so much more. It just had a way of just adding something that was missing, especially if you're playing in like power trios or just like, not a lot of instrumentation in the band. Just any little thing that you can do to spice stuff up. And I think that, that those techniques are definitely helpful in those settings too.
It's like comping. I think a lot of people think comping is this term in jazz where you're kind of using the instruments at your disposal, toms, cymbals, snare, whatever, bass drum, to rhythmically and melodically complement what the soloist might be doing at the time, or the other instruments in the arrangement. And a lot of people don't think about, well, what can or does comping look like in a rock setting?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I come in, is where I really try to use those ghost notes or some of these melodic elements, like I said with the death metal thing, where I'll use my right hand to go all around the toms, using those to my for whatever, because I've been in power trios where now, okay, well, I got one. Thank God the bass player I played with in a power trio was playing his bass like a guitar. It was really cool. So that filled out that, and the guitar's got the mid range, and then we got a vocal guy, but still we wanted a wall of sound. So it was really having to think about approaching the drums in a unique way, using some of those studies, like you were saying. Buddy Rich, Max Roach. Big Art Blakey fan. So it's like using some different Blakey chops or Ed Shaughnessy chops. Elvin chops, these sorts of things. We think about those sorts of names as jazz drummers, right? But you can take from jazz or, your dad's Christian rock stuff or Huey Lewis and the frickin' News. And, you can take from any of these things and apply to any other thing, whether it is rock or ska or death metal or anything else. All of these concepts are interchangeable, which is, I got a lot of flack growing up because I wasn't just listening to, if I was in the punk scene, I wasn't just listening to punk. When I was 13, I had a really great math teacher, Andrew Friesma, who introduced me to all sorts of, he's like, dude, you need to listen to more music. So I was listening, I loved the Ramones and the Clash and NoFX and Rancid. And he's like, here's Bell and Sebastian, which is this super, quiet indie stuff, or like, what were some of the other big ones? All that stuff in that vein, Camera Obscura, and tons of other bands in the sort of indie stuff. And so people would say, well, why are you listening to that stuff?
Right.
And then I'd be in a death metal band, and one of my favorite bands of all time is the Weaker Thans, which was a big band out of Canada. And that's sort of like post-punk, and then it kind of turned into like alt indie country kind of stuff. And it's never just about. I don't like being put into a corner, genre-wise, for what I listen to or what I perform.
Right.
And or what I so that kind of, I think, goes into the social media stuff where it's like, I'm not just going to play covers of a certain type. I'm not just going to play covers. I'm going to do the silly videos. I'm going to do the lesson videos. I'm going to do, for a long time, my thing was I was doing stupid frickin' food reviews for whoever would send me food from around the world. Like, I had people sending me food from all around the States. I had people sending me food from Europe and Japan and like Australia. I'm not kidding you, like from the stores. And so I was doing food reviews for a while. So that's kind of the thing I think people should take for if you're trying to build a social media presence, whether you're a drummer or a taxidermist or anything in between. whatever you're trying to build around a product or around, whatever, a skill, people don't just buy into, for me, drumming.
Right.
People buy into me.
Right.
And so I'm not just a drummer, so I'm not just going to post drum videos. I am going to post, food reviews and stupid videos and everything like that, because
Yeah.
if you're just the drummer who posts chops every day on Instagram, fancy,
Right.
stupid videos that all sound the same, then that's all you are, is you are just chops. You're not just the well-rounded. People
Yeah.
buy into the chops, then they don't buy into the person.
Right.
Right.
And because people buy into me as a person, and for the most part understand that I am just another dude,
Right.
living a
Right.
normal life who just does this for fun.
Right.
I think it yields more genuine relationships in the end.
Definitely. Yeah.
Whether it's, being able to sit down with you guys and do this, or being able to hang out with, Bob and Joe on that Catfish show.
Yeah.
Or, any of these folks that I meet on the internet that turn into real life friends.
Yeah.
That's, man, that just, not only do I think that it helps my, I hate this word, my personal brand,
Yeah.
but as much as it can, it enriches my personal life.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, again, I wouldn't trade that for anything.
That's awesome.
Well, back to the people buying into you thing too, for sure, because you can go to anywhere for chops. People can go to Luke Holland's page and follow him, or any other technical drummer. And, yeah, there's chops for days there. There's technical wizardry going on, but, that's not the experience that you are in particular bringing to the table. And as well, too, you talked about the variety aspect of what you bring. And I can even just narrow that down to the music aspect of it. I could speak to that because there's a lot of different artists and genres that you're playing music to, whether in a serious manner or not. And, like a band that I always thought was kind of like underappreciated, never much looked at, like Mute Math. You and I had some correspondence back and forth about them. And the guy a couple of the members in that band technically, but the main guy, I think his name's Paul, I want to say, the keyboard player / singer, who can play everything. He's a phenomenal drummer too.
Yeah.
He was actually in a Christian rock band that was like their version of, so like in contemporary Christian music, there's always like these bands that try to sound like other bands as a part of the gimmick, I guess. But he was in a band previously called Earthsuit, and they were a New Orleans based band. There's not a lot there, to be honest with you, that's worth listening to, in my opinion, but it has its moments. But when I saw him again in Mute Math, I'm like, how is this the same guy? Because this music's entirely different,
Right.
And his actual artistry kind of shined a little bit more so. But yeah, just that variety that you're bringing. You mentioned today the video that you put up was that Imogen Heap video as well. But I've seen everything. I've seen Blink 180, you doing Blink 182, and just so many different bands, artists, and genres too. And again, if you're just looking up drum reels like I was innocently to start with, there's plenty of content there for that. But you're going to get more than just the steak and taters whenever they come to your channel.
Yeah, you're going to get the cotton candy and the beef jerky and
Yeah.
the whole freaking shaboo, whatever that means.
So whenever you were in some of those heavier bands that you were in, was there much life to them? Did you do some touring or anything like that?
We did a lot of Weekend Warrior stuff. I was really fortunate because by the time I really started doing it, junior, senior year of high school, it was, I was like the kid who was just old enough where I should have been in the grade ahead, but they put me a grade behind just because of my birthday.
Yeah,
so
same here.
I had my driver's license in my sophomore year of high school. So, and as a drummer, you got to haul your own freaking gear for whatever reason that is.
Yeah.
But so I was gigging pretty well in sophomore year of high school, but then junior and specifically senior year, I had accrued so many credits that my school day ended at like noon.
Yeah.
And so, we would practice 2, 3, 4 days a week as these bands. And then we'd play, whatever, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever. And just going, and I was in multiple bands too. So it was just like, it was always running around. I mean, it was
Staying busy.
really,
Yeah.
that was a really special time for me, and it was a special time for music. It was like,
Yeah.
it was, it was still early enough in the course of punk rockery that, you know, you could book out a lot more church basements,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
you know, halls and stuff like that for whatever, $150. And you'd just call up your friends and everybody would play for free, and you'd come and whatever, you'd barbecue. And if you had
Yeah.
50 or 100 people show up, that was awesome.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think we were even more fortunate in that, because, and you guys, I'm sure you guys can, you've had these same experiences in your own life, is that because there's nothing else going on in the freaking Midwest.
Absolutely.
Right.
We would haul up to, there's these two towns. One of them's kind of famous now, but there was Two Rivers and Manitowoc. Manitowoc was the one from, there was one of the first Netflix murder shows was filmed, or, you know, stuff to bring up there. To catch something about catch a murderer, you know, I'm talking about the Manitowoc one. The one,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, we'll might have to Google that one. And so we played the first time I went up there. We played this big town hall in Two Rivers, and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know it was going to be a big space or anything. And I'm thinking, whatever, you know, if there's 80, you know, people there, I'm a happy camper. We played for 400 frickin' kids that were, whatever, 25 and under.
Yeah.
We had no clue. It's like the farther you go into the frickin' sticks, the more people show up to your show.
Yeah.
Yep. It was hard to get 50 people in Chicago sometimes, depending on the venue. So to have 400 in the middle of, you know, nowhere.
Kind of oversaturation in the market, though, I think is kind of what you're dealing with in some of them bigger cities. Like, with us being 65, 70 miles south of St. Louis, roughly, like, we out of necessity, like, you know, people were throwing their own shows. Josh and I actually booked shows for a little while. We did coffee shops. We did pizza places. We did a tattoo shop. We did it in the parking lot out of the tattoo shop.
Yep.
Like,
I played a show in the back of a flower shop once.
That's a little bit more obscure.
I mean, some of those shows were some of my favorites, though. Like the obscure ones, basement shows, and like weird ones like that. Those are some of my favorite memories.
There was a venue over in Champaign, Illinois called the Error House, and good friend of the show, Nathan. He had that. He had Error Records. He's a guy who did a lot for the Midwest heavy metal music scene. Made so many connections through him. And it's weird, like you said earlier, like how small the world is. So there was a guy that runs the Sanctuary venue in Detroit. Maxwell Lange is his name. He was in a band called Sender Receiver, which they were a huge groundbreaking band.
Maxwell asked me to be in Sender Receiver at one point.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
That's crazy.
That was back in the day. That goes back, dude.
Yes.
That goes back.
We booked Sender Receiver at a coffee shop in
That's
2005.
Insane. Small world, dude.
Dude, small world.
Yeah, that Max is such a good dude, man.
Yeah.
And now we've got so many friends and bands that are in touring acts too that like we're like, hey man, hit up Max in Detroit and play the Sanctuary.
Right.
And it's like one of their favorite venues that they play because I think it's like a gutted out. It's like in a weird place. It's like almost looks like it's residential, but it's like either an old church or something that they've gutted out there. I haven't seen it personally.
Huh.
But they even do like pro wrestling shows there. He does all kinds of stuff there now, but he's like running the place.
That's awesome.
And
good for him, man.
But yeah, man.
I always wondered what happened to that dude. Yeah.
He was always hustling, man. Like he was always in something. He played every instrument in every single band too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of like, the same scenarios that we laid out earlier. But yeah, he was a good guy.
I'd love to see where like the music journey's gone for some of our friends. Like we have a friend that's just starting today touring in Europe. His black metal band's on tour with who's he on tour with? Is it Cannibal
Dark
Corpse?
Funeral and Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah.
Wow,
Dude,
that's insane.
Yeah.
Storm Ruler's the
Storm
name of the
Ruler.
band.
It's a St. Louis black metal band.
Yeah.
They're blowing up.
They got the bass player from what is it, Phil Anselmo and the Vandals or whatever his solo thing is.
Yeah.
That bass player is playing for them on tour, but he actually is the guy that they flew in to replace Rex Brown on the Pantera shows. because
Wow.
Rex got sick. So like they're like
It's crazy to
in
see
with the
it.
Pantera dudes now and stuff too. Like they're blowing up. I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah. I know
Actually,
you posted pictures of these tour
what's
buses
funny about
and
it,
stuff.
I mentioned that Irish cover band that he and I were in that band together, touring around and doing shit.
From
and now,
Irish covers to
Yeah.
a metal band that's touring with Cannibal Corpse. How do you like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I
that's
know.
crazy.
It's such a wild world we live in for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so rad.
I know you had mentioned too earlier about playing multiple instruments, and I didn't want to gloss over the fact that one thing I think is really cool about the content that you have out there and provide is the drumless tracks. I noticed that as well. What was the inspiration for putting that together? And I know that you also do lessons. Was that kind of the driving force for that, to give somebody something to practice with, or was that? Tell me about that. How that come together?
Man, it was. I think Maxwell and I definitely. I think we clicked when we were playing different shows together because I think we're both definitely cut from the same cloth. It's just like you have to figure out a way to make it work.
Right.
Whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And the drumless tracks were kind of like that. They were born out of necessity. For a long time, I couldn't find a software that would remove drums from a song. Now there's 1,000 types of software that remove the drums, so now I can do a drum cover to anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But, at this point, I would have to listen through hours and hours and hours of stuff on streaming to make I have 3 different playlists out there on Apple Music that have all these songs without acoustic drums that I think would benefit from acoustic drums. And that's what I was doing my covers of at that point in early Instagram. And I got to the point where it's like, oh, I can't just do this. Like, I should create something I can play along to. So that's where the drumless tracks were born. The first, I think, 2 volumes are just stuff where I would take one sample and then I would play the bass and I'd play the guitar, or I'd play the keys, and layer all this stuff together and make a video then with that thing. And then people were like, "Oh, dude, this is like super rad. Like, where'd you get this?" I just made it and I'm just using it. And they're like, "Well, we want to use it too." So I threw it up on Bandcamp, and now I'm like 9 volumes in. I think it's like almost 900 different tracks. Because I went sample based after like volume 2, because I'm not putting all this freaking effort. I'm not, grabbing the bass, grab the guitar,
Very
grab the
time
keys,
consuming.
Come on. So, now it's much easier, and instead of being able to pump out 10 or 20 songs in a batch, I can do about 120, 150. So, now it's kind of cool because it's a practice tool for me. It's a tool to create content. And a lot of educators do use it with their students, especially if you're teaching kids from the ground up.
Right.
Mhm.
So, you want to teach a kid just how to play a basic rock beat, boom, ta, boom, boom, ta. Now, all right, you can say, all right, start with track, this track that's at a slower tempo, play it over that. And it's way more fun than playing to a metronome that's just having a click, every beat.
Absolutely.
This keeps them, enthused. And then there's all these different, speeds at which my tracks are at. So you start with one track and now you want to speed it up. There's a track for that BPM somewhere, that speed somewhere. And then the other part of it too, which is great, is, I don't have a Patreon or whatever else, people, the kids are using nowadays.
Yeah.
And so, one way that people support what I do on social media is by buying these drumless tracks. I put them out there for free.
Right.
So, any kid who's taken lessons, any person who doesn't have extra cash but just wants to use these tracks, you can download them for free. And then, there are some folks who pay $20, $50, even $100 per volume for these things.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so for me, someone who, I got a state job. I'm not, again, I'm driving a little Honda Fit that makes a really stinky noise every time I turn the thing on. So, so for me, that extra cash that the drumless tracks bring in, it makes a big difference. We talked about a little bit about illness and these sorts of things. I'm chronically ill. I'm on a pile of medications, of shots and potions and pills for the rest of my life. So again, it's having that extra cash.
Right.
It's
Makes all the
paramount
difference
to
in the world.
yeah, it means that I can afford the medications that give me the energy to scream into a mic for 15 minutes for your
Yeah.
enjoyment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was, I think that you could uniquely at least speak on this perspective is that I know, like in high school, whenever I was in what bands I was in and that sort of stuff, I'm like, how do these guys get these sponsorships? Like, I'm out playing shows, and like, how do I get sponsored by Zildjian or Evans or Vickfirth or whatever the case is? Like, that game has changed so much. You know, back then, whenever I looked into that, you had to be playing like some of the criteria. I want to say it was like
200 dates a year.
Yes, 200 dates a year. You know, you had to have so much time at so many venues, and like it was just insane. Some of the criteria that you had to meet in that day, and I know that you've had the good fortune of being sponsored in some instances as well. Is your social media content driving that opportunity for you?
100%. Yeah. You know, what's interesting now is a lot of the legacy brands, Zildjian, Diodario, who I'm an artist with now, you know, Ludwig, these sorts of companies aren't just looking at how many dates a year are you doing, how many eyes are you getting our product in front of. And in fact, they're shying away from that model. And I have friends who have gigged more than I could ever imagine doing in my own lifetime. I got a buddy who has literally been gigging out since he was 10 years old, and he's been full time since he was 16.
Wow.
And he's over 30 now. So, you know, he thinks, you know, well, I think this too. I think he deserves endorsements because this is a guy who is
paid his dues.
He's paid his freaking dues,
Right.
and he's a great player, and he's playing with a lot of people. He's done sessions at the Wilco Loft. He just did a session at Electrical Audio. He's doing a cruise ship where he just played with. He's in a band with like one of the guys from Fastball and others in another band, and they played like a cover. Amy Mann was on the ship, and they did a freaking song with her. Like,
whoa. Oh, wow.
Just cool stuff.
Right.
And he's doing really cool stuff, but because he doesn't have a bajillion Instagram followers, brands don't care.
Right.
So I'm fortunate to be in a position where brands do care, but I will say this. If you're a touring musician, there are plenty of easy ways to incorporate making content, right? You know, you put your phone behind you on a mount, just film the show. You put a GoPro up and you film the show, whatever it is. And then you just cut those clips up, throw them on Instagram, and that can be enough. But whatever it is, I would tell that musician or the social media musician, focused musician, center your wants for gear or those, you know, to work with companies. Center your focus on relationships and not on endorsements. So for me, a good example of this would be Cymbals. Now, I've got a relationship with Zildjian. I've worked with their previous social media managers since 2016, 2017 to produce all sorts of videos for holidays, Easter stuff, Christmas stuff. When they came out with the Effects Raw crash, I did a video for that release. And so those sorts of opportunities yielded me gaining relationships with some of these employees. It turned out, you know, first it was being friends with the social media manager, who coincidentally is now at Ludwig. And I was also friends with the gal who was at the top of the artist relationships, artist relations program now, who now works with all sorts of different corporations in the industry. And that turned into having a relationship with a few other folks, and now I have the opportunity to, if I need Zildjian or anybody, I can make a few phone calls and I'm good. I can get what I want. Now, am I paying for it? Yeah, but you know, I pay a price that I can afford. If I didn't have these relationships with Zildjian or with Sabian, who I also have a great relationship with some folks over there, or with now Turkish Cymbals, which is what you saw in the video that I played today. if I didn't have these relationships, I don't know if I could afford the freaking gear, dude.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
it's outrageous. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people
It's
don't realize that any quality, you get what you pay for.
Right.
Any quality instrument is expensive. Drums in
Yeah.
particular, especially the life of, let's say, a cymbal or a drum head or whatever
Yeah.
the case is, especially if you're out gigging and all that stuff, drums do not last like other
Oh,
instruments
no,
do, and they are very expensive. You know, to get a nice K custom crash, you're talking hundreds of dollars without question, brand new off the shelf. Hell, I went to a music go round 2 weekends ago here in South County, St. Louis, and they were still charging used like $250 for some K custom cymbals that were in good shape.
And then it's like, if you buy it used, you don't even get the manufacturer's warranty.
Right.
Exactly.
That's why I always buy them new. And so, you know, like I don't play a lot of cymbals, right? So I play usually 2 crash rides and a set of hats. That's it.
Yeah.
And the cymbal that I have, I've used the same Zildjian ride for 7 or 8 years now, is K Constantinople 22-inch medium thin low. And I think it's still the most expensive cataloged cymbal they have. I have 3 24-inch K-Cons. The one I have,
goodness.
my original I bought at the Chicago Drum Show, which was owned by Tony Royster. The second one was a gift from Zildjian. That was the only freebie they've given me, but that's really special. I don't even want to touch that one. I just want to look at it and say, "There's the cymbal they gave me." And then they reissued only through, I think, 2 shops, the 24-inch K-Con Lite, and I bought mine from a retailer, Memphis Drum Shop. And I don't play it often because, again, it's like a really special cymbal.
Right.
But the 22 K-Con medium thin low I play all the time. In my opinion, it's the perfect ride cymbal. I can use it for jazz, I can use it for rock, I can use it for metal.
Yeah.
It's got a wonderful crash sound, it's got a wonderful ride sound, and a wonderful bell sound. Because I play a minimal setup, I want to have something that does it all. But to get back to the point, pricing. Now, a few years ago when I bought that cymbal, it was the street price was $650. This year they came up with a price increase. I think that one cymbal is over $700.
Holy moly, dude!
You know, so it's more difficult for someone in my situation to be able to afford that. And so having these relationships, again, whether you're a touring musician or a social media focused musician, these relationships are going to be the thing that enable you to have easier access to the products that you want to play. But B, you should think beyond that. You know, back in the day, depending on the relationship, you might be paid to play a certain product.
Right, for sure.
Jeff Porcaro famously was a Pearl endorser and would play it at all his clinics and everything. But he had a Gretsch kit that he played behind closed doors. You know, so it's
yeah.
But anyways, you know, at that level, you can be paid to play, you know, that sort of stuff, right? If you're the world's best drummer, then you can also you can get paid to play that in front of people, and you can play a Gretsch kit at home. But, you know, now it's like, how can we turn, instead of having an endorsement deal where you're just basically, you're a glorified discount program, that's what you're doing.
Right.
How do you turn that into another source of revenue? Some brands are willing to pay folks to do videos that highlight new products, certain products they want to move, that maybe they have excess inventory, you know, whatever it is. You can get paid to create content for the people who are also giving you that discount.
Right.
The route that I've taken is a little different because now I went to school for English, but my focus was on business writing. So it was like marketing, copywriting is what we call that. Technical writing, which is like writing an instructions manual.
It's funny how many people in the music industry are in copywriting. I'll just say that.
It's a pretty easy skill.
Several.
It's a pretty easy skill. And, you know, so if you're creative, I'll say that. If you're creative, it's a pretty easy skill to put to work. But, you know, because I have that, and then I have this social media thing for the personal brand that I built, I can use the skills that I have to help some of these companies. So I can go to, you know, I've worked with drum manufacturers. If There's a little yellow drum just in the
Yep.
corner here, back here, and that's from Franklin Drums, who used to be called Risen Drums. They're a company out of Minnesota, and they were doing a rebranding, and I helped out with them, and I helped with art direction on the logo. I helped with them kind of determining what their proprietary shells were gonna look like. I helped with giving them some advice on operations stuff and outsourcing and that sort of thing for when the time came. And as a result of all the hours I put in there, I got a giant, beautiful drum set as a gift. I got
That's awesome.
a 20 and a 16 kick. I got a 12 and a 14 tom and a 14/4 snare in a custom finish I wanted to mimic Ludwig's Lemon Strata, which is like kind of a black and yellow kind of bumblebee Strata.
Yeah.
And they did it all for free. So
That's awesome.
there's that kind of opportunity where it's like literally $0 free drum kit. Yeah, we're gonna call that a win. And then there's also
Yeah, absolutely.
there's like there's the drum set with the paint on it back here, which is from Revival Drum Shop. That's the first production model of the Revet kit. That's like a special Ludwig kit you can only get through the shop in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
And all those guys there are friends, and I've helped them market Jose's first book, the owner's first book, which was called The Stoic Drummer. I did social media management for that book for a while, and I would get a check every 6 months,
Very cool.
which was awesome.
Right,
and then he published a second book, which is called The Drummer's Ethos, which is on the shelf back there. And I have 2 pages of my writing in that book.
Oh, that's
very cool.
Super, super cool. And, this could go on and on. Like, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a DW over here.
Yes, yeah.
And so here's where it's like, this doesn't just apply to manufacturers, depending on what you're doing. I've worked with a lot of manufacturers. I've worked with Revival Drum Shop, a retailer. And in the middle of all those things, there's distributors.
Yeah.
So I've worked with Drum Factory Direct when they were doing a huge website rebuild. They hired me on to do a bunch of copywriting. And that that helped save a couple months of my life, money-wise.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's another gift. And then artists, there's the thing that completes the picture, right? We go from the manufacturer to the distributor to the retailer to the artist, the player. That DW drum up there was from Kurt Biscara. If you don't know that name, Kurt has played with everyone from he's on Mick Jagger's records. He's played with Elton John, Sarah McLachlan.
Wow.
Big time session drummer.
Oh,
Big
dude,
artist.
this dude's a heavy session cat. Like, an amazing guy. And we connected over Instagram, and he asked, we kind of went back and forth, and we started having phone calls. Now we're like homies, which is like incredible, because it's like, here's this dude whose videos I would see on YouTube or whatever, or his picture in Modern Drummer, and like, now we're just FaceTiming, or we're just like on the phone. It's nuts.
Yeah, that's wild.
And he was like, I really want to figure out what I'm going to do next. And part of that, I think I need to spruce up my website. And so I rebuilt his whole website, kurtbiscara.com, if you want to give that a peek.
There you go.
And built it out. And all the time and effort I put into that and kind of helping him figure out what he's going to do next. When we originally talked, he was like, oh, man, like, you're going to do all that? Like, how much is this going to cost me? And because it's Kurt Biscara, A, I'm honored to do the work.
Yeah.
B, I was just like, well, let's think creatively. Kurt's not the kind of guy. We're freaking musicians. We're not loaded.
Right.
How do we do this where Kurt feels good about it and I feel good about it? So I said, dude, just like, give me a drum. And so now I have this custom freaking DW snare with wood hoops, with a proprietary shell. It's just a straight maple shell. It's not collectors, no re-rings, which to me, that's the way to do a shell.
Yeah.
And it was Kurt Biscara's. And he's like, yeah,
That's
dude,
awesome.
I played that on like hundreds of hits. I'm like, this is crazy. It's in my freaking basement now for helping them out.
That's
so again,
incredible.
if you think about this as screw endorsements, build these relationships with all these companies across the industry. Not only are you going to get the discounts, you're also going to be able to make a little bit of money where you might not have thought about making money previously. Sure. And you're going to be able to have these relationships, whether it's with some of these employees or with some really freaking cool drummers like Kurt Pescara, you do not know where this is going to take you. And, again,
That's
all
incredible.
from social media, dude. I don't
Right.
live in a music town. I live in Kenosha, freaking Wisconsin. And from here, it's the same for you guys. Like you're not that far from Nashville in the same way that I'm not that far from Chicago.
Right.
Well, I'm closer to Chicago than you guys are to Nashville, to be fair. But
Yeah.
Chicago's not that big of a music city either. Really, you have to be in LA or Nashville, maybe New York, to really do this.
Right.
And to make it easier, much
Sure.
easier. So using social media, thinking about these relationships in this way, I think is the paramount to finding success as a musician today. Again, whether you're touring or doing remote sessions or just trying to, build a personal brand, whatever your ultimate goal is, this is the way that you need to think about it, because the old ways are that way of life is extinct.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah, life's changed for sure.
With regards to your advocation for building these relationships and things like that, is that what afforded you the opportunities to do some of your session work? I know that you did some work with Fox and Disney and Warner Media and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah. So the first sessions I got were through. I was starting to use what is it called? Hashtags that were not focused on drummers, but focused on the people who hire drummers. So like hashtag music producer, hashtag recording studio, or hashtag session drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And implementing those efforts, a dude reached out to me from LA and said, hey, have you done remote sessions before? And I said, yeah, I've done that. I lied through my freaking teeth, dude. But I knew I was ready. Yeah.
Right.
I knew I was ready. And so he let me do a, Wicked, the Wizard of Oz play.
Mm-hmm.
He let me do a Wicked slot machine soundtrack. That was my first remote session I ever did. And working with that one guy, it went from video game soundtracks, which were bread and butter. That's great, easy money if you can get the gig. Video game soundtracks to film and TV, which was a lot of and movies, which was the Fox stuff. We did what is that? What's that Christmas movie where you'll shoot your eye out, kid? The Christmas
Story.
Christmas Story.
Yeah. So there was a Christmas Story live TV special, which was not good, but I worked on the pre-pros for the theme music, and then the Greatest Showman. I worked on pre-pros for the song that won a Grammy on that.
Oh wow!
And then that turned into the Disney stuff too. I did a big show for the Park in Tokyo for a big festival. It's like a festival of the stars, like the Stars in the Sky that they do every year, and I did a big thing for that. I did other stuff that was played at all the entrances of the park for a year. And then I did a few different songs and shows that got picked up for the cruise lines, the Disney cruise lines. So through that one guy, this one guy who asked me if I'd done this before, and I just said, oh yeah, okay. So,
Incredible.
Instagram, dude. And then there was the Warner stuff was really interesting because it came much later. And I started posting on TikTok, and dude, like no one looks at my TikTok. It's not like a huge channel or anything.
Ours either.
And it's terrible.
Yeah.
So,
I guess we aren't shaking our ass enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna show my boom boom more often.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that'll work. But this dude Scott Hellman, he's a Warner artist in Canada, found my TikTok, and he sent me a text message. He got my phone number, and he's texting me like, "Hey, is this like the dude, like from TikTok or whatever?" I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I'm the guy." So we started talking, and so he's like, "Yeah, I've been working with this producer in Nashville. I'm working on a record. I really want to have you on it because I love your '90s covers." Because I was doing all these '90s covers at the time, like what's that big Third Eye Blind?
Yeah.
All
Great
that kind of
band.
stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. 90s rock, dude. I love 90s rock.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so I wound up working with this dude, Togs is his name, TAWGS. I think it's like Togs Silverman. He's done like, what is that? Walk Off the Moon, I think that's the name of the band. I think they're like an acapella group, but they're big.
Mhm.
And he's done a ton of their stuff. Works with basically a ton of Warner stuff is all he does. So Togs let me play on a couple songs for Scott. I played on a record for, I don't remember the name of the band, but there was like a country band on Warner Canada, and then there was another thing we did too, but I don't even remember what it was. But
Yeah.
it's just like, again,
Crazy opportunities,
videos,
man.
yeah, videos that didn't get any. They got plenty of traction on Instagram, but videos that didn't get any traction on TikTok.
Right.
One guy saw it, turned into a text message, and now I've done multiple sessions for
Incredible.
Warner Records. It's just, dude, the power of social media, whether it's, befriending your heroes
Sure.
or getting, non-traditional gigs that, I mean, I played on a Snoopy video game, a Peanuts video game
Yeah.
that had to get approved by the Schultz family.
Wow.
And they loved it. It was just like, wow, like if my mom's
What an
mom was
honor.
around, she would have been freaking out. Like, that's
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
cool. My
Yeah.
grandma,
Yeah.
my grandma, it was kind of the thing is like, I played in all these little bands, and my parents and my grandparents they didn't really get it for the most part.
Right.
They think, you're just out there for the debauchery or whatever, because they knew what
Exactly.
it was, in the 70s and 80s, and
Exactly.
especially
Yeah.
because my Uncle Dick, because he was out there doing it, they knew exactly what was going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I'm able to say, hey, here's a video of these are the drums I recorded in Mom's basement, and now they're at this is a multi-million-dollar show
Yeah.
at
Right.
Disney in Tokyo.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's those were the kind of things that it finally clicked. It's like, oh, I guess Tim can really play drums.
Yeah.
So that's not only was it special for me, but or for whatever, for my career, I guess you could say. But it was more special on a personal level because I was finally able to, I
Yeah.
don't know, feel like I got that approval. Feel like I
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
and
validation
as
there for
much as
sure.
there's validation. As much as you don't need validation from no one, but it sure does feel good. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's
Especially
hard
when
to
you
get a
put your
pat
heart
on the
and
back
soul
every
into
once in a
something.
while.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know that you do coaching and instruction as well, and I don't want to leave that piece in the dust. What does that look like for somebody? I know that, through your website and things that you have, your link tree that you have up, people can engage with you and employ your services there. What does a coaching session look like with you?
Yeah. So I don't approach this from the way that most teachers or educators approach this. Most time when you go to a lesson with any sort of whatever celebrity or a drummer
Yeah.
who has a little bit of technical prowess, you show up to the lesson, you sit down with them for an hour. It takes about 20 minutes to get into the lesson, and then you get about 20 minutes of instruction and then 20 minutes of goodbye. I want to give people value, so the way that I do this is my price is a little higher than going to a local Joe Schmo because I think I bring a lot of value, and so I tell people, send me any questions you have up front, any of them. And I'll take that list of questions and I write out all the answers. And then I give them a giant document with all their answers and a ton of other answers to other questions, depending on the topic, social media, recording, career stuff, or just drumming.
Yeah.
And they get those, and then we have a conversation about those questions and answers during. And then they don't have to worry about taking notes. We can just focus on the two people talking, and they get to take those written notes home with them.
Very
So,
cool.
I think that brings a lot more value than traditional lessons. And the other thing is I don't mind teaching beginners. I've taught beginners before, and that's a lot of fun. But now I tend to focus on like working drummers.
Yeah.
So I teach working drummers how to get started with recording. I'll teach them how to take those skills and create a really easy way to create a ton of social media content. And then I teach them how to optimize the way that they're posting on social media and how to use that to build a career in such a way that they achieve whatever goals they have.
Very
I
cool.
do that because that's the experience I have. That's the
Sure.
thing that you can learn drumming out of 1,000, how to hit the drums
Right.
out of 1,000 books and a million YouTube
Right.
videos. And I think you should do that because you're going to save a ton of time and you can do it, or a ton of money
And money.
too. And
Yeah, for sure.
you do it on your own time. You learn from whoever you want to learn from, and
Right.
that's fine. I'd rather teach the things that you can't really learn in a book.
Yeah.
There are some books and videos on audio recording, but I think you really need to talk to somebody about it because if you don't, it's tough. It's
Right.
tough
Yeah.
enough to set a freaking microphone up in such a way that you get a good guitar tone.
Right.
Now I got freaking 12, 14 mics on a drum set. How the heck are you going to make that sound good? You got to have someone to help you out with that.
Right. For sure.
And I feel like social media and the career stuff is the same thing. There's so many moving parts that it's helpful to have someone who
navigated those waters. Yeah.
I've done it, and I have a lifetime of amazing stories to tell for it. And in the same way, because I have that marketing background and all the life experience, I can sit down with someone and say, "What do you want to do? What do you want out of this?"
Yeah.
Because it's so different now. Some guys play in bands now, but it's what about the dad who wants to put a few drum covers up on YouTube? What about the kid who lives in rural Alabama who's 18 or 19 and says, I don't know, should I move to Nashville or is there a way I can do this here?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I not only do I have the experience to speak on that because of my own personal experience, but I have the experience to speak on it because of all the friends that I've made over the years, because we have these conversations. I tried going full time in 2019, which didn't work out only because I got really, really sick and almost died. But prior to that, oopsies, what I was doing with my life is I was still working full time, and I was taking nights and weekends to message these drummers who I was following on Instagram who were full time. And I'd say, hey, I see you're coming through Chicago. Can I come and buy you dinner? And I'd buy these guys dinner and I'd pick their brain. And the first couple times I felt like, man, I don't really know what I have to offer you, but I want to pick your brain. I want to understand how you make it work playing full time. But what I quickly learned is a lot of those guys who were doing it full time didn't know how to do social media. And so now I had something to offer them back. And, through all of those encounters, I learned how so many other people have made it without social media, while knowing that I have a unique path and I have unique life experience that does have value to these guys and other drummers out there. So I guess
as simple as
that's how all that evolved.
Yeah, as simple as it sounds, to like reach out to somebody on social media and say, "I'll buy you dinner." There's a lot of people that don't think about that, though.
Right.
To create that opportunity for yourself. So really, it's outside the box thinking.
Drummers have this really unique community, and I'm sure you guys have seen this as you played gigs too, where it's guitars for the most part, they kind of whatever, they might hang out with one another, and bassists they might hang out a little more often than the guitar players do because they got less of a big ego.
Right.
But drummers, no one cares about what we do, and we can't have a big head. If you had a big head, you'd be kicked out of the band.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
I know
because of the nature of who drummers are as people.
Yeah.
We for some odd reason, we have fostered a really, really tight community, and drummers will vouch for drummers. And I think it was Abe Laboriel Jr., I believe, said this once, which is basically he was asked, what do you say to a drummer who wants to get started professionally? And he said, there's plenty of room. Just come and, we'll help you get a leg up. Other drummers will help you get a leg up and get into it. And I truly believe that principle remains the same now.
Yeah.
It looked very, everybody could do it 20 years ago because of touring, and everybody could do it 20 years before that because of touring and recording and bigger budgets.
Right.
It's becoming harder to do that now, but the nice thing is that there are so many paths now, but there's so much access to all these drummers online,
Sure.
and we're all, not all,
What's the worst that's going to
most
happen?
of us, yeah.
Somebody say no.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
Josh Freeze, Josh Freeze,
Yeah.
big session drummer, plays with the Vandals, plays with Devos, played with a million other people.
Yeah.
Josh Freeze followed me for 5 minutes once. I sent him a DM and he unfollowed me. Bill, Ash Stone followed me for a few weeks, and I tried messaging him back and forth a little bit, and he just ghosted me and unfollowed me. I'll name drop him. I don't care. I've never done this before on air, so I'm probably going to get some heat for this, but it's okay. I understand guys on that level. They are way above what I'm ever going to do with my life. If they don't want to give me the time of day, that's okay. And this is kind of what I tell people is, yeah, the no is probably going to get to be the worst thing, or the block, or the, whatever, unfollow is going to be the worst thing you got to deal with.
Right.
What you have to do is find people who champion your work and make sure that those people are people whose work you want to champion too.
Yeah, sure.
The guys and gals, the folks who I'm friends with, are people who I love the way that they approach the instrument, and I love the way that they approach life. They're truly friends, and I think that's the only way that you can approach this sort of thing, and it doesn't feel like networking. I hate that term. Networking is, to me, such a heartless term.
It is. Yeah.
It's about building community.
Yeah.
And if you build community, those bonds are stronger. And you get to that place like Abe Laboriel said, where you're going to have friends, real homies, who are going to help lift you up, and who then you can help lift them up. This goes two ways.
Sure.
So that's the way I look at it.
Absolutely. Tim, you've been so generous with your time today, and I want to close out the conversation with some lighthearted questions, or at least I think somewhat lighthearted, and just to peek into your personality a little bit more. So I like to call this our fun question segment.
Let's do it.
Hey, I got to ask you about Rushmore of drummers. Who's on it for you?
Oh, man.
This is a tough one, yeah.
I'm going to have guys that you probably never even heard of.
Probably. Especially me. You guys are drummers.
Jason Tate is the drummer from the Weaker Thans. He's played on 1,000 other records and lives the life that I want to live, where he goes and he fishes a lot, and then he has a garage that's like a studio that he works in during the day.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Great drummer, though. He's one of those guys where if you listen to some of these records from the bands, not only is he focused on the instrumentation, but he's focused on like the production. What drums am I going to play on this to get the sound that I want? How am I going to achieve sonically the tone that's going to come onto the record? Right. This guy really cared about that, and I appreciate that. Some of the other drummers that I would put up there as far as like the ones that people are going to know. I like Jim Keltner. I always go back to Jim Keltner. He's the dude who played on like Knocking on Heaven's Door, the Bob Dylan version. He's played with George Harrison. Plays a lot of like weirdo stuff too. Like he did a record with I forget the guitar player's name, but Mike Watt played bass. Mike Watt from the Minutemen. And just like bizarro stuff. And he's one of these guys who plays with all feel and emotion, as opposed to just like, guys like Steve Gadd that's another one who should be on that list, is Steve Gadd, because Steve Gadd bridges the Buddy Rich style military, technical drumming, right, but inserts the feel. Whereas I'm trying to think of a good example of this. To me, this is probably going to get some heat, but Buddy Rich would be on the other end, the far end, where it's like just technical. It is just chops, 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 chops. Right. So to me, people who can bring their personality again through emotion and through feel into their drumming. Right. Those are the elements there that you cannot take away. Yeah. Like you can't emulate.
Right.
Sure.
I can
Sure.
I can try to emulate, like Steve Jordan's a good example. I can try to emulate Steve Jordan's sound all day because I know like he's gonna
Hmm.
pull his or his drumstick back so far that there's only a little bit hitting the snare drum, and that's how you achieve the Steve Jordan tone. And you hit
Yeah.
the other drums and cymbals a certain way, and you
Yeah.
tune them a certain way. But dude, I don't have the freaking swagger that dude has. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm never gonna sound like him. So, but in the
Yeah.
same way, because I try to insert my personality, my feeling, my emotion into my playing,
Right. Right.
gonna be, I could teach you, and I teach people this all the time. All my little bits and pieces, and my
Yeah.
grips and my throws and chops. I teach them that all the time. But because you're not me,
Right. Doesn't necessarily it works for you.
you can't sound like me. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are the guys who I really admire.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always like
Good
that
things.
Mount Rushmore talk because people approach it differently. Sometimes people will try to take the technical aspect of it. I just look at it for me personally, like who inspired me, where did I find myself, crossing another threshold creatively to learn other stuff, and it sounds like you kind of took that approach with your answers as well, which I really like.
Well, think about it in the metal world too. As much as I liked drummers who could play super technical in death metal,
Yeah.
it was the feeling that again tied it all together for me in the death metal world too. Like Naveen Copperwise, he played in a band called. Do you guys remember Animosity?
Yes. Animosity. Yeah.
Animosity was like California, like pothead death metal.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds right up my alley.
It was like if Cephalic Carnage was like really tight.
Yes.
And more and just like
super clean
from outer space.
Yeah.
And so what was really cool about Animosity is all of those musicians came from a different planet. And Naveen, he's got a new band now. I think it's called Entheos. But Naveen, and he brings some of that same styling to the band. But because this was like he was young. I mean, the music came out almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So he was a young kid, and he didn't have all the sort of knowledge and time to really put into the music. So it was raw. It was so raw to hear him play on these records.
Yeah.
Animal is the record I would recommend to folks. And his drumming, even though it was super technical, was bringing in like gospel elements and prog elements that felt so much more human than the drum machine style blast beats and quick drumming and fills that a lot of the other guys would bring in there. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Naveen Copperwise, put that guy on my freaking Mount Rushmore.
Hey, here's one that will certainly piss somebody off with. Most overrated drummer of all time, in your opinion?
Oh my God. Who's the most overrated drummer? That's a tough question. I mean, it's so subjective, right?
Sure.
Right.
If I said John Bonham, then people would say, I love John Bonham, so I'm not saying that's my guy.
Yeah.
Right.
There are so many dads who either, again, it's like a love-hate thing, right?
Sure.
Now, I think Buddy Rich did a lot for drums. I have a huge Buddy Rich poster here. I have two of Buddy Rich's cymbals on my little drum gear shrine back here, and I appreciate what the dude did for the instrument.
Right.
Yeah.
But in that school, to me, again, just to go back to the freaking message I'm hammering home here, like there was a drum battle between Buddy and Gene Krupa. Gene Krupa is the dude who literally modernized our instrument.
Yeah.
He was the dude who went to Zildjian and said, you got to make these cymbals way thinner because they sound like gongs.
Yeah.
And he was the guy who went to Slingerland and said, I want 2 tunable heads per drum.
Yeah.
Literally invented the drum set as we know it today.
Right.
And Gene, he wasn't as fast as Buddy or flashy, but Buddy and him had a battle, and I think it was Buddy who actually went on some sort of interview and said this, but he's like, with one note, Gene Krupa would get more applause and a roar from the crowd than Buddy would get with 100.
Yeah.
So it was like that showmanship.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
as much as I appreciate these guys for their technical stuff, it's almost like a more modern example would be like Dave Weckl versus like Dennis Chambers
Mhm.
or Vinny Colaiuta. All these guys shredded.
Right.
But to me, like Dennis is just, it's like freaking makes your face melt with the feel he puts in. Like there's a great clip on YouTube from the Buddy Rich Memorial Concert, and it's Dennis on the far end, and there's 3 drummers. Dennis on the far end, in the middle, I think it's Louis Belson in the middle, and then Greg, what's his last name? Greg, who plays drums with Ringo now. Greg Bissonette.
Okay.
And like Greg is like playing into like Dennis's time, or at some point he does something where he's like playing into one of the other guy's times, and you see Dennis just get so angry in his face, and it's like, all right, dude, game on. And so like every time Dennis like gets his like 2 bars or 4 bars or whatever, it goes from, like, all right, cool, Dennis is shredding, to like, oh my God, this guy is like in another universe, just like,
Right.
And it's just like the craziest stuff I've ever seen in my life. But again, it's because of
He's
emotion.
so knocked out. Yeah, he's so knocked out.
It's taken it to the next level. So if you can find that clip, that is one of the funniest, most amazing clips of drummers I've seen in my life. And then, Louis, God bless Louis Belson. This guy's like, older than old. And he's just like, and and then
innocently out there.
and then it gets back to angry Dennis, dude. It's just
That's
so good, so good.
Another question I had for you was a guilty pleasure band or artist. I know you already, maybe the Weaker the Ends fits that category, but throw somebody else at us.
Yeah, who's a good guilty pleasure? The most modern guilty pleasure I have is probably Fred Again.
Okay.
Which is this like UK house and like electronic producer.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if I have anything that's more guilty than that. I don't really like get guilty about anything that I listen to.
I don't either.
My library's all over the place. So I hear you.
I don't either, but there are some people that I think are good that people would probably look at me and find surprising. Like, I'll just give an example for me. Like, probably my go-to on this usually is like Halsey, the pop artist. Like, she's an amazing singer.
Yeah,
she just did this album with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, her last album.
Yeah,
and it was incredible from a production
was
standpoint, and the instrumentation and arrangements was just knocked out.
Right.
It's one of the best produced albums I've heard in a long time, at least as far as being unique. And it's just hard to be unique in the pop industry too at times.
Right, we're like in the
I
feel like we're in the remake age, so it's cool to see people doing original stuff. So.
Right, for sure.
There's another good one on that, Kim Petras. I don't like a lot of the music she's doing now, but she had an album called Transylvania, and I feel like whoever produced that was like the biggest Daft Punk head like ever.
Yes,
and it's that record is amazing front to back. And then another good one from like the old school, Harry Belafonte.
That sounds familiar.
Who did like Jump the Line, which is that song from frickin' Beetlejuice. He did.
Oh yeah.
What's the song that everybody knows is Deo?
Yeah,
like
Deo.
Yeah. That was him. Yeah. And he's got so many. I mean, they're
catchy
amazing
tunes.
songs. Yeah, I got into him. I knew the songs, and then like one of my best friends, his name's Sahan Jayasuriya, and his parents are they're all Sri Lankan, right?
Yeah,
and his parents actually grew up in Sri Lanka, and the reason why I got into Harry Belafonte again was because I spent like a week and a half at his folks' place out in California, and at one point he told me his parents and all of Sri Lanka, as far as like classic artists, love Harry Belafonte because this dude was one of the only big pop stars at the time who came to Sri Lanka and played there.
Yeah,
I was just like, what a freaking legend! Like this dude could
that's
play
awesome.
anywhere in the world, and he's coming to this little island, in South Asia, and now he's literally like a god there now. Like freaking what a dude! What a good dude!
If you could put together a dream musical project, what would that look like genre-wise, and what members would you implore?
That is a tough one.
Oh, dude! I mean, that could go a million ways,
Right,
right?
right.
Like, I think so. I'd probably want to play. I just give me the freaking weaker thans, dude. I'd play with John K. Sampson because what's cool about that band is John Sampson is like you think he's got a master's in English, and again, so it's like all the lyricism is spot on. Politically, I align with what all these guys are doing.
Right.
I've hung out with Jason before, so I'm really fortunate to have been able to do that in my life, and I'm fortunate enough to have seen John K. Sampson live. But to hang out with those dudes and make music with them, I would cry. If there was someone bigger or like someone, I don't know, if there was someone bigger than that I could make music with. Oh God, now you're testing me.
Yeah.
Let's just do a quick little look-see here.
When I was younger, I used to try to make up like my all-star lineup of a band, and it's just like that never-ending answer to a question. Like you're always refining what that
Right.
is.
Because there's always so many different
change over the years. Too.
So many different people in each category that you can, So it's pretty broad.
I'll say this as a drummer: if there's one person I could have a lesson with right now, I've been on a Richard Spavin kick for a while. He's this British dude who plays like really, really cool electronic and hip hop R&B type of beats, and they're just like totally different than any other player.
There's a guy on Sargent House called his name is D'Antoni Parks. It's kind of a similar thing. Yeah, he's insanely good, man. And I cannot remember the name. I think it was pretty popular in like the '60s. But his uncle was an R&B artist, which I had no clue that he had that familiar connection. He just posted about it on Instagram the other day, and it just totally shocked me. Now it's not sticking with me now who it was, but yeah, D'Antoni Parks is a really good drummer as well.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Desert Island albums. You got 5. Tell me which 5 are you taking?
5?
Yeah.
I got to pull up my notes. I got good notes for this.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the things that I give to students is that list because like it's just like such obscure music generally that people haven't heard of. There's this really weird. I don't think you guys would like this, but there's this record I really like. It's called In Flesh Tones by a band called Azeda Booth, Azeda Booth.
Uh-huh.
It's a really bizarro record, but I love it. I love it so much. So that's 1. 2 would be, oh man, God, you guys are killing me. I would do the weaker thans. I'd probably do Left and Leaving, which is one of their earlier records because that's got a few songs on there that mean a lot to me. I need something a little more upbeat, so I'd probably do an album called Marriage by a band called Attack in Black. It's another Canadian band. You know me, I love these Canadians. And
are you a UFO fan?
No, I don't know. I never got into that band. I was thinking ELO. I thought you said ELO for a minute.
Oh no, I do like ELO.
I get into ELO, but Attack in Black is a dude now who does his own solo stuff. Daniel Romano, which is another like if you're into like. He's worth listening to. I don't care what you like. He's like the dude. Really, really great musician. Okay, so is that 2? I gotta speed this up. I'm not doing 3. Very well. Yeah, all right, good. 3. I only got 2 more. That's great. All right, here's another one people haven't heard of. The Best of Blood Boy EP by Blood Boy. One word.
Okay.
Blood Boy. And it's this gal, I think she's from New York, but it's just this really cool pop record that I really like. And then I'll round it out with I'm gonna do an ambient record. No, I know what I'm gonna give you all this. No one is gonna like any of this music that I'm recommending. But this is what I listen to. People are going to listen to this. They're going to stop listening to me after they start listening to this music. These records, because I'm going to just call it the band, but if there's 2 records from this band. None of it's on streaming. You can only find it on Bandcamp. The band is called Slime Boys. Slime and then Boys, Boyz.
Okay.
There's two records. They're so short, I'm going to put them together because I could burn them onto one CD, so I'm calling that one record.
One album.
Yeah, they did a split record in 2012 and then a record called Guns N' Roses in 2014. And what's so cool about this, it's this dude, I think his name's Dean Paris. Let me look it up because I literally was like on a Google storm to figure out where this dude is now. Dean Paris. He's a New York guy, and he was doing this music, 10 years ago. And it's so cool because it's like, it's all sampled. He's like literally sampling like the Lion King theme and like the Beatles, like just
That's hilarious.
Straight up. But it is so cool, like the stuff he's combining. And he's got, I don't know what synthesizers this guy has. I can't figure it out. It's almost like chiptune synths, but it's
wild.
not chiptune. It's so cool. So those are my Desert Island records, and they're mine because no one else is going to listen to them ever. So
There you go.
there you go.
Hell yeah.
You can stop.
I wrote down a couple of them. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, the only thing I was familiar with that you called out was the weaker thans. But yeah, man, especially that last cat, I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
You're going to hate it. I
don't know, man. I'm pretty open-minded.
DM.
I'm pretty open-minded. I'll give it a chance for
You're like,
sure.
what the hell, Tim? No, just kidding.
Yeah. Well, folks, I know we covered a lot of ground today for everybody, and Tim's got his hands in multiple things here, wears multiple hats. We're going to be putting Tim's Linktree link inside of the episode details so that you guys can go and check out Tim everywhere he's at, across social media as well. Tim, I know that you're on Instagram as well as TikTok. We talked about that. Anything else out there for folks to follow you on?
Yeah, Instagram's the main one. You're going to find most of my information there. Hopefully later this year you'll find a podcast, and that'll be connected to a YouTube channel. I have 800 YouTube channels. Wait for the one that says Timbo from Keno. That'll be the one we're going to call home from now on.
Okay.
Right on.
Very cool. And we're definitely going to link up the YouTube channel as well, especially we put our episodes up on YouTube, the interview segments, so you guys will be able to jump straight to Tim's channel from watching his interview on our episode as well. Tim, it's been a pleasure today, man. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge.
Yeah,
you guys, thank you so much for having me on. Love the type of people and the conversations you're having with the pod, and I hope you guys enjoyed this time, and I hope the 2 people who have held on here for all the nonsense I've been spouting the last 2 hours, I hope that they enjoyed it too.
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This is Barrett from the ATI podcast. Each week, Josh and I discuss current events, pop culture, music, TV, movies, politics, sports. Nothing is out of bounds. You can also tune in to learn about rising artists, small businesses. Whether it's music, graphic design, filmmaking, or even a brick and mortar mom and pop shop, we will be spotlighting folks and their endeavors. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Anchor, or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Just search ATI Podcast. We would like to thank you for your continued support, and as always, please stay safe out there.
Hey, this is Josh from ATI Podcast. For show updates and news about the podcast, follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ATI Podcast 22, on Twitter at podcast_ATI, on Instagram at the ATI Podcast, on TikTok at ATI Podcast. DMs are always welcome. Have a question for the show? You can always email us at atipodcastquestions@gmail.com. Stay safe out there.